Today I'm talking to my buddy Jonatan Ramhöj. How did I do with your name, Jonathan?
Ramhöj. It's a
I'll,
tricky one.
I'll never be able to say it quite like a native Swedish person. But thanks so much for popping over to chat to us about your career today. Really appreciate it. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about your career journey so far?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a front-end engineer, software engineer. Um, been doing that for 10 years. Started in Sweden, Stockholm. Went to higher vocational education. It's a school. It was an education called interaction designer back then.
Okay.
So quite broad. We tried a little bit of design, usability, programming, a little bit mix of everything. Uh, so that's what I did. And uh, as a part of that education, we also had internship at two different companies, actually, during those 2 years.
So the design, so you're doing like, was it graphic design or web design? And then usability is kind of user experience, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, graphic design. So we were able to like try out Photoshop and InDesign and all of those programs
Okay.
that we had back then.
So tell me, when you were thinking about getting into software engineering, what made you want to go that route? Because when you're in school, we don't do anything like software engineering, or at least in Ireland, we don't. How do you get to 18, 19, 20 and think, I want to be a software engineer and I'm going to study that?
I actually started quite late, so I was into music for a long time. I went to music college, and that was like my biggest passion for many years, up until my late 20s actually.
Oh, cool.
And then I had a friend that applied to this school in Stockholm, so that's how I basically I felt at that point that I didn't come any further with music, and I needed to do something completely new,
Right.
and I was trying to find that thing in my late 20s.
Okay.
So thanks to my buddy that's applied to this school, he opened my eyes to IT and web development. So that's how I applied to
Okay. So you could have been a songwriter or a rock star in another
in
in another
another
world.
parallel universe. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Very good. So your buddy kind of introduced you to the idea of software engineering, and then you enrolled in the course.
yeah. I did, and I knew nothing about software engineering at that time. I hadn't written one line of code at that point.
So totally new
Yeah, I was
world.
just, but I had the feeling, intuition that this is the right thing to try. I
Yeah.
had just have to try it, and start.
Do you think the music, were you studying like theory as well, or was it just learning how to play and compose and
Yeah,
write?
both.
Both.
And there's similarities, I guess, too.
Do you think there's a similar part of the brain that we use for music? And like if music's kind of mechanical and software engineering is kind of mechanical as
Mm.
well, do you think maybe that's one of the things that attracted you, is you're using a similar part of your brain?
Very likely. Funnily enough, I met many software engineers that are also musicians during my career. Like it's quite a common thing
Yeah, it
for
seems
some
to be
reason.
kind of
Yeah.
common as well, right? So very good. So then you embarked on the course. You were doing design, coding. Is that
Mm.
right?
Yep.
And maybe usability or user experience.
Exactly. Mm.
Um, and so I suppose where did you go from there? Did you enjoy one of them more than the others, or was it more job opportunities?
Um, exactly. I felt quickly on. So yeah, you could basically have taken a few different career paths with that education. You could have gone into becoming a designer, or more of a UX
UI,
person,
UX,
UI
UI,
UX,
right?
but yeah, or programming,
Yeah.
back and front end. We had all those options with that, but I felt quickly on that like I like structure and kind of structure to things. So I like the programming part more, since that was like more straightforward in a way. Like either the program works or it doesn't. But design
Mm.
has so many opinions, and so
Mm.
I felt I like design, but for me, my brain worked better for programming somehow.
Right. Yeah. So it's much more fact based, or it's much more quantitative, where design is very qualitative. It's very subjective. It's opinion based. Whereas front end is like it's right or it's wrong. It
Yeah,
works or it doesn't work. It's a lot more
exactly.
binary.
A lot more binary,
Okay, okay. So
literally, and
yeah, so that gave you a sense of relief, was it? Like, yes, a binary topic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, can you tell me, because I hear software or I hear front end engineer all the time and back end engineer. What are those things? What are they?
yeah. So on a website, or you have something called the front end. That's the part where the user interacts with everything you can see on the screen. Basically, the buttons, the text, the images. That's basically the front end. And then in the back end, yeah, that's the part the user doesn't see on the screen. Basically, where the data gets stored in a database or
Mm,
on a server, which is just another fancy word for a computer somewhere,
right. So it's the code, it's the database,
Mm.
it's all the yeah, the data behind
The data
what's on
behind. Mm.
the website. And so is there a big difference between being a front end and a front end and a back end software engineer?
It is a big difference, actually. Front end is more about user experience and the design elements of things. We work really closely to designers, so I'm very used to working with the design tools and collaborating closely with designers to implement their ideas basically in code. That's what I'm doing a lot of the time, most of the time. And backend is a bit more further away from the design and user experience part.
Mm,
It's more of more maybe perhaps logical thinking
mm.
and that those kind of things.
So did you choose that kind of very clearly that you enjoy maybe working with the designers and the creative aspect more than purely the binary element or the back end element?
Yeah, yeah. I felt that early on that was my biggest interest in. Yeah, that that part of it was the most intriguing part, making it look pretty, making and making exciting interfaces and so on. I felt that early on. Basically, just making things happen quickly. It's also about getting feedback early.
Mm.
Like if you're clicking on a button and something's happening, you get like this dopamine kick very
Right,
quickly,
right.
right? But well, backend is more like you have to have maybe more patience, I guess, or
Okay.
um, it's not that immediate dopamine kick,
Right.
at
So the
least.
feedback loop is much quicker on the front end.
Much quicker.
It's also, I think it's a very interesting discipline because there's very few disciplines that give you such an immediate feedback loop compared to front end engineering, right? Because as you're doing something, you can see the result of it immediately refreshing on the page. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So did you feel like the learning curve was quick, or or do you feel like it takes a long time to learn front end software engineering?
Um, it takes. I think it is a shorter learning curve than backend, probably.
Mm.
Back in the day when I started 10 years ago, the websites were less complex as well. Um, or it was more divided, like front end was mainly HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript or jQuery back then.
Mm.
So front end initially was more easier to get into, I think, because HTML and CSS are languages that are easier to pick up for a beginner.
Right.
Whereas backend languages require a bit uh, more basically
Yeah,
studying.
more study, more technical knowledge,
Yeah,
all
those
that sort of
things.
stuff.
Yeah,
So when I think about this topic of software engineering, it's like looking into a black box. I've no idea what's in there because it's just totally foreign, it's totally alien. And so I always want to know all these languages: CSS, C Sharp, C++, Python, Java. Um, right, there's probably another 20 or whatever. What are they all for? Like when we speak English, yeah, or Swedish or Portuguese, or we don't keep changing languages all the time, but software seems to keep changing languages and creating new ones.
yeah,
What are all these languages for?
yeah. That's a good question. So you have the languages I just mentioned for the web, which is HTML and CSS, which basically marks everything up and makes it look pretty and organizes the content on the website.
Right.
And then for the interactivity, you have the JavaScript, which has been around for a very long time now, and it's just getting more popular every year. So that's the web stack, as it's called, those
Okay.
three. And on the backend side, there's multiple languages to create for various purposes.
Okay.
For Android, you have Java. For iOS, you have something called Swift. And then you
Okay.
have the older C and C++ and all of those as well.
So we've created new languages for new software and hardware like mobile phones or tablets. Do they all have their
Yeah.
own new language? Is that
They have their own unique languages often.
okay? So then that all gets tacked on. That all gets included in new websites now, I guess,
Yeah.
which makes it that's what makes it much bigger. And then what do languages like Python do? Because
Um,
I hear Python, I see Python all the
I
time.
think JavaScript and Python are the two most popular programming
Okay.
languages. And Python is used a lot for research and AI development and those
Okay.
things. Um, so it's a very popular language
Yeah.
as well.
So it kind of begs the question because when I was looking at your profile and when you hear about all these languages, you're like, wow, there's so much going on here. Um, and you're thinking if somebody is thinking about getting into software development and they're thinking, well, I want to learn the right language. What's that? You know?
That's a great question. I think many people ask that question when they first start out. And it's there's no really right or wrong, but it's more about what you think you're inclined to do, what you feel motivated to do. If you're more on the front end side, or you feel more like intrigued by the design aspects and stuff, then you should probably start with JavaScript, because that's the language of the web. And actually, JavaScript is today powering much more than just the web, and also
Mm.
mobile phones, and you can even do backend with JavaScript these days. Um, Node.js. So that's kind of. But if you're more of the like maybe the person that likes the more logical things and that kind of part, maybe you should look into Python or one of those languages.
So do you think maybe starting with whether you're interested in working on front end or back end is a good place to start?
Yeah,
And then maybe, so if you're interested in back end, then you're looking at the data-based languages, and front end, you're looking at, yeah, the HTML and
yeah,
the CSS, right? All that
exactly.
sort of stuff. So, yeah, I'm getting into it.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
um, so there's another idea I have about approaching that for people who are thinking of getting into development, which is you go onto the job site and you look at the most popular requested
Mm.
language by just using a search, and you
Yeah,
see, well, what, like if I type in Python, how many results come up? And if I type in CSS, how many results come up? And then you get a combination of the two or three most popular ones, which seems like logical sense, but then at the same time, maybe they don't fit together like a jigsaw. Is that like a problem? That you need to have languages that actually work together, not just have a random back end one and a random front end one.
actually, most front ends are agnostic to the backend language. You can use basically any backend language, and that will be fine with the front end. They just need the data somehow
Okay.
passed to it. So that's fine. But I think that could be a good option actually to check what are the most requested languages,
Okay.
and that is often JavaScript or Python or you know uh, what React, etc.
Yeah, so they don't need to fit together as such. They don't need to be totally in sync.
No,
You can just do it on popularity.
you can.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. So then you're working with designers, you're working with the back end people as well. But what is a day in the life of of a front end software engineer? What's that like? Are you looking at code all day? Are you on emails? Are you on meetings? Um, what's it like?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a lot of coding, obviously, um, but there's also many other aspects. Like there's a lot of meetings, coordinating with other colleagues, project managers. So we have at my current project, we do a weekly sprint planning, and then we have also other meetings and test sessions and so on throughout the week. So I would say it's a lot about communicating and what you're doing, what you're about to do, and collaborating with your colleagues
Yeah.
constantly. So
Yeah. So lots of communication and
mm.
collaboration. What do you think makes a good software engineer? What are the characteristics or the skills or the natural attributes that you should have maybe a very mathematical mind or logical mind or structured mind?
Um, I think that helps, but as with most things in life, it's like about your drive and motivation to do something. If you find it interesting and fun to do, rewarding, then that's a big help. I think one of the things that are important is to be able to focus a lot for extended periods of time, like finding that part interesting and fun, like problem solving and having patience enough and
Mm.
and those parts.
Yeah, there must be. I mean, it's all problem solving, right? Everything is a kind of problem to be solved, right?
Yeah.
In a way. Just on the focus, I read this book by a guy called Cal Newport who is big into he's a software engineer, but he's also like a lecturer and a writer and stuff like that. And he wrote this book about deep work, which is all about like focusing for like hour-long periods or two, and really, you know, getting tons of stuff done. Is that a key element? Because I guess when you're looking at all the code, you need to understand the code before, the code
Mm.
after, the problem to be solved, how it fits in. Like you're kind of your brain must be multitasking or thinking of lots of different elements at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, deep work is really important. That's why it's good to invest in like a pair of noise canceling headphones or something if you're gonna work out in a co-working space or something, an open office space.
Yeah.
So you can do because yeah, that's a part of our job to be able to contemplate problems and then solve them. That requires a lot of deep work and deep thinking and focus and not being too distracted.
Right. So how do you set up your day so that you can do the deep work and get the most out of your time? Right, because that's going to make a big impact on your productivity and your results, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I try to start a day with completing or targeting the most challenging things I have to do first, so I can focus on them. I usually prioritize them the first in the morning, and then do lighter things later.
And do you do chunks of hours or do you do like 45-minute sessions?
I should actually use the Pomodoro technique where you
Yeah.
like take frequent breaks. I think that's could be very helpful. I'm bad at that.
Yeah.
I'm like I find myself sitting too long often.
Do you stay in concentration if you stay for long periods of time working on a piece of code or working on a problem?
Yeah, I guess that's a part of it. Like it takes often a bit of time to get into deep work and
Yeah.
deep focus. So I think that's like a part of it that we are often sitting for quite extended periods
Yeah.
when we're developing or problem solving.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like there's a bit of discipline there as well to stay in that zone and solve that problem, right?
Definitely.
Um, so that's cool. So you went to the technical college, you learned about design, you learned about engineering, and then you got your first couple of jobs. Is that
Mm,
right?
yeah,
In Sweden?
in Sweden. At one of the places I did my last internship, I also got a job there in Stockholm, Sweden. And then I worked like, I think 3 or 4 years in Stockholm
Okay.
as a software front-end engineer, various consulting agencies.
Very good. So what was it like going from the course to work? Like, was there a natural transition or was it like, oh my God, everything we learned on the course doesn't relate? Or it's like, okay, yeah, I can see how the course directly feeds in and,
I think so. It was quite broad, so a lot of the things we learned I didn't actually use in the
okay.
actual work so much. They now changed that education and made it much more narrow and focused only on. I think it's even called front end development or something these days. So they've actually narrowed it down. But yeah, I think I had like a fairly broad understanding of the profession of the job after school, but I actually picked up the real skills when I started working.
Mm,
That's when I like really got into well, partly during my internship, but mostly when I actually started working and having senior developers around me that
mm.
could actually instruct me to do certain things.
So what were the top tips and the top skills? Was it about communicating to get the best out of the designers and the other team members, or was it how to organize your day, or was it they're very much on the technical side of writing good code?
Very much on the technical side of writing good code in the beginning years as a junior developer. Uh, just how to do things better, code reviews, getting someone to look at your code and help you out with this and that, uh, and participating in everyday work life, the meetings and everything.
Mm.
But it's in the beginning, it's obviously more about learning and absorbing, um, as you progress.
Learning from others, yeah. No, I guess seeing how the company works
Mm.
works well. Um, I sometimes I come across the ideas that you know, one person has written code, and then it might be, let's say, not the best code or messy. So there must be kind of a bit of a translation work you have to do if you inherit someone else's work, and then you kind of have to see, you know, the same way as if we inherit a piece of writing and we need to make it our own, and maybe improve it. Um, What like is that a common thing, and how do you deal with that sort of thing where you inherit code and maybe you have to fix it or improve it or even understand it to start?
Yeah, that's the most common scenario in our job. Like we we sometimes write things from scratch, like, or we're coming into setting up a project from scratch rather. That happens too, but it's the most common scenario is that we're inheriting someone else's code and having to. So it's a little bit of a startup time getting into a new code base
Right.
and learning how they have written things, organized things. So that's reading and understanding code is a big part of the job.
So it kind of seems for such a structured profession, it's kind of interesting that there's not like a structured way of writing code, so the next guy comes in and understands it immediately, right?
We're trying as much as we can to make it as structured and as possible, and having like a code standard in every project that should be followed.
Okay.
So kind of how we organize files, how we write the different set it up in different ways.
Okay, okay. So that is a
Mm.
good tip for someone starting out to follow the code standards and to have their files organized in the right way. Uh, do you think that's something that you learned in work, or was that communicated in college?
It wasn't communicated so much back in school. Those specific things. It was something definitely I picked up along the way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So top tip, right, for someone getting into the world of coding. Now, I was on your LinkedIn profile earlier this morning, and I came across something that I absolutely have to ask you about. You have developed the largest resource on dog nutrition. That was a pet project.
It was a pet project, yeah.
See what I did there? So that was a pet project. Can you tell us why did you do that, and how's it going?
Oh yeah. I met someone in the Philippines. I had a neighbor there, a couple I used to hang out with, and they were in the pet industry, running a big pet website in the UK. So we just and I did coding, so we started to collaborate on that. There was an idea my co-founder had for a long time. So yeah, basically just a website and a mobile app that you can search for food, basically anything. There's over 2,000 entries,
Yeah,
and just get a result and see if it's good for your dog or not, and what the risks are with eating it, and how much they can eat, and so on.
super.
So it's a big database of
And you
knowledge.
did all of the development on that front and back end?
I did everything on that project, yeah,
Wow. You must have learned
basically.
a ton, did you?
I did learn a lot, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And that's something I can recommend to people to also try to do the whole project, both back end and front end. That really, gives you more insights and a broader understanding of the development, how everything interacts with each other.
Right, okay. So good to do it at least once, so you maybe know how to communicate with the other person, the front end person or the back end person or the designer.
Yeah.
And was this a commercial venture? Like, were you hoping to, or are you hoping to make it into a full business or to commercialize it?
It is the plan to commercialize it, and it's in the works right now actually to take it further and being able to monetize it
Mm.
more. I'm not so operational at it anymore. I did the groundwork, the initial MVP, so to say. and but now it's other people handling that part.
Right, right, right. Okay, good, good outsourcing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I want to ask you about something that I think software engineers get asked about all the time, and give you a chance to respond exactly the way. So, I think everyone feels like, oh, I've got a project that I've got an idea for an app, a
Mm.
website, you know,
Mm.
that I need someone to develop for me, right? And then the engineer is in the position where they have to say, well, I'm very busy, or am I going to get paid for this? And they say, oh, well, we'll pay you after, and we'll pay you if it goes well, and all this sort of stuff. Do you get asked these sort of questions often about, oh, I have an idea. Can you develop this for me? And then if it goes well, then you can take a percentage, and you're kind of like, well, I need to get paid as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe I think people that are not so familiar with software engineering and IT and so on, they perhaps don't have a full understanding of how complex and time consuming it actually is to launch an app or a website, especially apps perhaps. But so it takes time and it's complex, and it's not easy. And we trained hard for it many years to be able to do what we do. So yeah, you have to be maybe it's an educational process too.
Mm. So when someone has that idea and they're approaching a software engineer, what do you think is the best way? Like, is it just a case where they should say, okay, I'll pay you up front, and you just develop it, or do you think it is a case where people would want to take a share of the profits if it works well?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit on a case by case basis
Mm,
what your goals are as a developer. If you're more in maybe need the cash, maybe it's
mm,
better to have a fixed project cost. Uh, or otherwise, if you're more long term thinking and really believe in the idea, maybe it can be good to get equity
yeah.
for the work you did. That's what I did with the pet project.
Oh, so
So
you got fees and equity,
just equity.
just equity.
Yeah. So it's a gamble. It's a
Yeah,
gamble, of course, if you do it like that.
yeah. Depends on your situation, right? I
Mm,
guess if you're really focused on paying rent, then maybe you need to start with the fees.
yeah.
Uh, but then also maybe you get fees and a little bit of equity if your fees are, let's say, lower than you would normally charge. Maybe you only charge 70%, and
Mm,
then you get 30% equity to
yeah.
to make up for that last part, so you don't have all the risk. I just think it can be harsh on developers if they have to take on all the risk of a new idea, and then the person with the idea is like, well, we'll see what happens.
Definitely.
Uh,
Yeah. You have to be mindful of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So something to take into consideration.
Mm.
When people are embarking on software development, do you think there's any common mistakes that they make, or just common pitfalls that you can encounter?
I think it's with most things in life, you have to just start doing it, and like you learn best by doing new projects, doing a lot of projects. That's kind of the advice I have, I think. And instead of getting stuck in tutorial hell, as it's called,
Mm,
and doing too much as tutorials, but actually doing your own projects and try to do maybe both the back end and front end at some point.
yeah.
So you really,
So you
yeah,
learn by doing. It's a super hands-on.
it's very hands on thing.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. So it seems like it suits uh your structured way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
AI is the big word, the big term on everyone's lips these days. We've got ChatGPT where you can go in there, and I used it to write a little bit of code for my website the other day. Um, not perfect, but pretty good. How do you think AI is going to impact your industry? And if somebody was starting, would they worry about it?
That's an excellent question, and there's pros and cons. Of course, like the pros are AI can help you understand code quicker. You can ask a question, you can have it like almost like a mentor and bounce questions and ideas back and forth. What do you think about this? Can you help me with this? Blah blah blah. And it's actually on a very high level. It can help. It's actually incredible how far it's come. So there are pros for beginners. Like it's almost like a personal mentor
Personal
structure.
tutor, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but also it's the downside is you can be lazy with it. and that's not so good. You can actually, I think it can be a challenge for new people to actually learn and fully understand what they're doing
Mm.
and fully understand the inner workings of what they're doing,
Yeah.
the coding.
Or the impact that so the AI can write good code, but then what's the impact of it? And has it thought about everything that you would think about as a human developer? For me, I wonder if it's like using specialized equipment. Like if someone's using specialized equipment in another industry, we still need the person who understands how to use the specialized equipment.
Mm.
The specialized equipment does most of the work, but we still need the person who understands how to use the specialized equipment. You know, like in construction, there's guys who drive the cranes. But the crane does most of the heavy lifting, literally.
Yeah.
But we still need the crane driver who understands how to use the crane.
Mm.
And so I wonder if software development is going like that. We still need software developers to use the specialized equipment, the AI in this case,
Yeah.
to be able to do that, even if it does the heavy lifting. But we still need a little bit of interpretation or a little bit of human interaction still.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to be the case for quite some time, at least. And building complex systems, websites, apps for larger companies, especially, it's still, you can't just outsource that to an AI. You definitely need a human being that fully understands what they're doing.
So that's cool. So you don't worry about it taking over?
Not yet, at least.
Yeah.
I think it's just gonna, I think actually it's just gonna grow, our profession. I have quite an optimistic mindset about that.
Yeah.
AI will be more like a helpful tool for us engineers.
Yeah.
And like everything, it's evolving. Like the profession is evolving, and it's just like, doctors have better tools today than I had 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Much better instruments, much better processes, much smoother for the patient, right?
Yeah.
It's just the same with AI and coding. Like it's just a tool. We will be able to be more productive, build bigger, better systems for companies, maybe faster.
Yeah. Also, you'll have to build AI.
Yeah, someone has to build the AI.
It still has to be built itself, right?
Yeah.
And applied to certain other apps and programs, right? It's going to have to be integrated, and so it's kind of interesting. Is it going to take the jobs, or is it going to elevate them? Like there's people who used to go around and count on pieces of paper, and now we've got apps that count, and we've got software that counts, and now we've got people who analyze that, data analysts, a job that wasn't existing, hundreds of years ago. So sometimes we worry about our jobs being taken, but often they just get elevated.
That's what I feel too. And especially if we want to be a multiplanetary species and stuff, we need to build faster, bigger, better. So I think we need the AI to build.
That's great. As a career coach, I never think about being a multiplanetary species, but this is obviously something software engineers think about. Just working in a totally different realm altogether.
Yeah.
What is Web3? These are all my software development questions. What is Web3?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So I think it's been a progression, right? We started with Web 1, that was a very static form of the internet with not much interactivity, just like text basically, right? And images. And then Web 2 was this phase where we had social media and Facebooks and all of this and that, where with the personal information thing. Basically, what I'm saying is the user is the product kind of thing, right? It's free, but it's
your data is the product.
Yeah, your data is the product. And Web 3 is this new paradigm where it's more decentralized, and we're not about to sell our data as easily or give it away as easily. It's more about protection, data protection, and being in control of your own piece of the internet, basically.
So this is the blockchain.
Yeah.
Essentially, or decentralized.
That's a part of it, yeah.
Data. Yeah. It's getting bigger, or it's just a side type of thing?
I think it's like it's in the works in parallel with Web 2, so to say. We have both Web 2 and Web 3 at the same time now. We have this kind of we have like certain decentralized sort of exchanges in crypto and stuff like that.
Okay.
So there's a few use cases for it.
When people are going into development, do they need to learn, like, is Web3 something you need to learn, or do you already, when you know the languages as a foundation, does that allow you to enter into the different aspects of development regardless of the innovation in technology?
Yeah, well, the paradigms coexist in parallel. So if you could do as like front end engineering for a Web3 app or platform, for example, and mainly work with Web2 technologies like the existing ones.
Mm,
But some of the new Web3 technologies would be like Solidity, for example, if you want to develop an Ethereum dApp or something, or
you have to learn new
yeah,
language.
a new language
Okay.
basically.
Okay.
Uh,
So that's a whole new undertaking.
that would be a new undertaking, but they are based on the existing one, so it's not too hard to pick it up.
Okay. Is that something you plan to do?
I've been actually looking a little bit at it and Solidity and smart contracts and all of that, which is a part of Web3,
Right.
and it's a fascinating area, I think. But I'm still quite very much still in the Web2 world
Okay.
doing that kind of projects with those
Like, when
technologies.
you're thinking about your own professional development as a front-end software developer, how do you think about the next language to learn or the next paradigm to tackle? Or are you just doing it on a needs basis based on the contracts that come into you?
Yeah, so for me, I've been fortunate enough to I was fortunate enough to pick up JavaScript quite early. So that's and since that has just been growing and growing in popularity all the time, and most apps and websites are running on JavaScript these days, or and frameworks like React, which are based on JavaScript.
Hmm.
That has been very like lucrative for me. Like I didn't have to pick up any other language. So
Okay.
that's something to be mindful of if you're starting out. Like, what are the most popular languages, and what do companies actually use to build
Right.
stuff?
Right.
So
So again, going with the demand in the market and
mm,
then supplying that demand rather than purely going with your interest, maybe.
yeah, and some people, they like to learn more. They are more. They like to know many languages.
Right.
They have a curiosity to learn a lot. For me, I'm more about the end product I'm building, and not so much the language itself. Perhaps
Yeah.
I like to build things and create things, and I already have the tools needed to build that.
Yeah.
So I haven't felt this a big need to pick up so many other languages.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Well, it comes back to that prioritization question, right? When you're starting off, you need to learn something. What are you going to learn? Well, what's going to be most in demand in the market and prioritize and start there. And
Yeah.
it's good to hear that, you can say once you've got a foundation in those languages, it can be lucrative. Like it can give you good opportunities, good jobs, and you can offer your services to companies. When you're working, are you predominantly freelance or do you work with companies?
Yeah, I've been a freelancer now for a few years.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was employed.
And how do you find freelancing compared to being employed?
It's a much more freedom and flexibility. Like, I feel more in control of my life.
Okay.
It's good when you start out to be an employee because you have to learn all the things, and it's good to have other seniors around you and that structure that an employment can provide you. I think it's really good when you start out.
Mm,
But after a few years, I felt that I am, since also software engineering is so flexible, you can do it from anywhere with a laptop. I also felt like it was really a natural step to go into freelancing
mm,
and sort of have that more freedom. I like to do things on a project basis, and employment is like it's a never-ending thing,
yeah.
basically. And that kind of, yeah, I like to do it on a project basis. Then I feel I can put more energy and effort into it.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice.
Mm.
So, like but maybe it was good for you to start, or it's good for someone to start in a company so that they have the feedback and they have the team environment to start. Do you think that's a good place to start, or do you think they could start freelancing?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, there's always like, some prodigy that maybe can
Yeah,
can
yeah,
do,
yeah.
can do that. But generally speaking, it's much better to go into to get an employment to start.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And learn from others around you, and then
Mm.
go into freelancing when you're super comfortable with
Yeah.
what you're doing. Um, Super. Well, you're really giving us an insight into the world of software engineering. If you're talking to 18, 19, 20-year-old Jonathan, and you're trying to give him some tips before he embarks on his journey of music and then developing a website for dog nutrition or pet nutrition, and then going into freelancing. What sort of tips would you want to give your younger self?
Yeah, but like, don't be afraid to try things, like experiment and venture outside of your comfort zone. It's like a cliche thing, but like really try to do that and network, meet new people, and yeah, don't be afraid to experiment. That's what you have to do when you're young. Test as many things as possible. That's kind of what I did actually, to give myself a little bit credit for it. I did try in music. I did do a few different university courses, and I tried to see what was appealing to me. So, and eventually I found this one.
Yeah.
So,
So it's the same process you use at work, right? You do something, you test it, you improve it, you test it again, you do it, you improve it. And that works for you both in life and in coding, right?
it does.
A life through code.
Life through code.
Um, so fantastic. Um, that's great. I think I have a really clear idea of, well, as clear an idea as I'm ever going to get about front end software engineering. It does seem like a fascinating area, and it's interesting to hear how you think AI is going to be a good tool for it going forward. And it's going to maybe add to the repertoire of skills that engineers have.
Yeah,
Thanks so much for chatting to us, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. Great to hear all your insights
pleasure.
and your knowledge. And I think definitely any potential software engineers listening to this will get some good tips and insights about how to start and what languages to learn and how to interact with colleagues and all that sort of good stuff.
I hope so.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.